The National League is calling Boreham Wood's name once again.
Scunthorpe are on the rise again. The iron is gleaming once more.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the National League Weekly Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris, bringing to you another roundup of all the drama, news and excitements across the National Leagues. For today's episode, our special guest joins us all the way from the Northeast, the apprentice media assistant for South Shields Football Club. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Ben Marston. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Firstly, we just want you to tell us all about yourself and your role at South Shields, what you do, what your day-to-day looks like and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'm Ben. I work for South Shields Football Club in the National League North, and my job role isn't really what you'd normally expect on here. So I obviously I started with the first team, as most people when they start working with a non-league club do, they start working with the first team. But South Shield has a thing, and it's a pretty unique thing. I know Macclesfield actually have one of these as well, but we have what's called South Shields International Academy, and yeah, like I said, Macclesfield also have one, and I think they're the only people really who have one as well, at least at our level. And there's a couple who aren't linked to football clubs. And basically what we do is we offer a degree partnered with like the University of Sunderland. So, each academy, so Macclesfield is one international academy. You have Stephen Gerrard Academy, they're one. Then I2I is another big one. And what it basically is it's linked to a partner with the university. So a player can come to England and stay wherever and go to the University of Sunderland, but they play for South Shields International Academy, or they play for Macclesfield Academy, or they play for I2I. And it's a pretty unique way of making money. We get a lot of our player base from the US, but they come from all over the world, and they do a degree, whether that's an undergraduate degree or a master's degree, and they all usually come out of the college system or the high school system.
Yeah.
And come and play for us. So like I said, it's a really good money maker for the club, and it's something that really, really helps the club financially when it comes to, that sustainability thing, especially in non-league and even going higher. The financial stability is the most important thing. And as much as you'd love to chuck money at the club, if financially that's not a viable thing to do, you can't do it. So having something like the International Academy really, really helps the club. But it's also really cool for us because, well, without it, I wouldn't have a job, first off. So it is really cool. But we play in the NFYL league, so the National Youth Football League, and it's an under 23s league. And we will play, your Macclesfields, your I2I, Stephen Gerrard Academy, but we'll also play a couple, um, you know, other clubs. I think there's Alfreton's in our league this year. There's a couple Tamworth as well. There is a couple quite cool teams you'll play. I know Mansfield have a team in our league, and we'll play at their training ground, which is always a nice one to go to. But really for me, it's not really much different to working at a first team in terms of the media output. And I'm at South Shields as a media apprentice. So I started working for them voluntarily for about a year with the first team, and it was really just a case of right place, right time. Because I was in college and I was doing my first year of college, and I was doing a business course which literally has nothing to do with football, whatsoever. But we had to do 30 hours of work placement somewhere, and I remember speaking to like a social skills teacher. I remember talking to her, and she's like, "Right, you need a placement." And I saw my friends getting placements in like charity shops and just completely random places. Right, they're never gonna want to work. You're never gonna aspire to work there. And they basically were like, "You just need to work and do a work placement somewhere." And I'm like, "Does it have to be, business related or this or that?" And they were like, sort of, but not really. Like if it's not, we're not gonna sort of strike you down for it. And I was like, right, well, I want to do something pretty cool, right? You know, it's like work experience. You never people go and do work experience in the most random places ever, and you can tell that you definitely didn't want to do that, but you didn't pick something, and that's what you got thrown with. So I thought that's definitely what I don't want to spend 30 hours of my life doing. So I thought, okay, well, I've got LinkedIn, and I've got the internet, and there's a lot of football clubs around here. I've done a bit of media stuff, not a lot, and there's have you heard of a club called AFC Crew?
Yeah,
They did yeah, so they ran by a group called New Fan. So I actually worked for them for a year. And I was doing loads remotely for them. And that kind of sparked the idea of, well, hang on, like I'm doing this and I quite enjoy that. And I need a placement, and there's not really a better place in the Northeast for football, is there? You know,
no,
you've got Sunderland, Newcastle, you got a lot of clubs really, really close. So I thought, right, okay, I want to do something cool. Let's do it. So I messaged every single football club that I could feasibly get to. Bear in mind, I was like 16 maybe at the time, and I was like, right, I was on Google and I'm saying, where can I get to here? Right, I can jump on the metro to here and jump on the metro to here and so I think in total I messaged Sunderland, Newcastle, Gateshead, and South Shields. And was like, right, one of these will reply. And I remember like going through all the LinkedIn's and finding people's emails, and I messaged every single one. Um, I remember thinking, I hope Newcastle don't say yes, because that's one where, especially as you know, someone who lives in Sunderland, and all of my friends are Sunderland fans, and I'm a Sunderland fan. If you came home and told them that you were working for Newcastle, I don't
yeah.
think they'd accept it anymore. It was one of those where it's like professionally that would be, that'd be really cool to do, but personally, I hope none of my friends ever find out about that one if they said yes. But South Shields got back to me, and they had a guy who was doing the media, and he'd done it for like 10 years. This guy was
Right,
like
yeah,
part of the club, part of the furniture, and he'd been there for a long, long time. And he was like, yeah, like, brilliant, come down and we'll get you on some stuff. And I think he really appreciated that hand because he'd basically done everything by himself. And he was at the club when they were playing in parks in the Northern League too. Like, in front of 50 people and 100 people on a Tuesday night. So, yeah, I got involved with him and was helping with the first team. I remember my first game was like, I think it was Chester, and I think we lost to Chester, or we lost to Peterborough Sports of the game after as well. And it was the run where I joined at a really bad time because Julio had pretty much just gotten sacked just after I joined. I don't think I saw us win a game until the next year.
yeah,
I joined in like November, and I don't think we won until January. And and I remember I was like going home and away, and I'd done all the home games, but I ended up going to Blythe on Boxing Day, and that was my first proper away day, and we lost to Blythe, and then we played them because the National League do this weird thing where it's like your local rival, or well, at least for us, it was always our local rival. You play the double header where you play like it was either New Year's Day or the
yeah,
30th of, but then you play the same team on Boxing Day and on. So you basically play them back to back. And I remember, I think JJ Hooper scored or something, and Cedric Main scored. And we lost that game. Then I remember, then Julio got sacked, and we'd done the other game on the first, like the first or the 30th. And I remember we had Bishop Stortford on a Tuesday night, and the guy who was the media manager at the time said like, I'm going away and going on holiday for a bit, so you're gonna come with me to Bishop Stortford, and I'm gonna show you how to do the stuff on a match day, so you know what you're doing while I'm gone. And I remember jumping on this bus to Bishop Stortford. It's my first time being on a team bus, and we'd gone. I remember this was when Bishop Stortford, like, they were pretty terrible in our league. I think they had like 17 points on on the board, and it was January. Like it wasn't great for them. And for when they're in the whatever division they're in, the one below they're a pretty good team. But the
mm,
second they got to the National League North, whether it's because obviously the National League do the weird split thing where you've got some teams that aren't really northern in the North League because there's just so many Southern teams. So maybe that's why they couldn't cope. But we'd gone up and it was like, oh, we're gonna roll this team over. And I remember like we were 2-1 down in the 80th minute or something. We ended up winning 3-2, and I got back at literally like 2 in the morning or
Yeah.
something from this away day. And I remember I had a college exam the next day, and I'd gotten back and I'd finished it, and I was like, right, this is sick. Like traveling with a team, going to these stadiums. Just a week ago, I'd been on the pitch in front of a sold out away end at Blythe. Like this is awesome. And I was just the only thing I was really focused on was I want to just do more of this. I want to keep doing this. And then the guy who was the media manager at Shields, he then got a really good job in the championship, and he left and went to the championship, and it
Amazing.
was one of those. Yeah, so I mean, he's doing really, really well now.
What's his name?
Dan Prince, he works for Middlesbrough now.
Oh, great.
So he'd gone to Middlesbrough, and it was like, all right, well, we need more regular help, and obviously college is only like what, a day or two a week max. So I was spending most of my time like going to training on a Friday and going to games and doing whatever I could to help. And I just dropped out of college at the time, as we got to the end of the season, and they were like, well, what are you doing next year? Like, what's your plans? And I was like, well, I'm gonna jump on a media course or something. Like, I don't know. This is what I'm doing at Shields, and I seem to be quite enjoying it. So I'll jump on a media course or something at college. And they were like, well, why don't you just come and work for us? And obviously I was maybe just about 17 or just about to turn 17. And they were like, obviously, we'll work something out. And they said, well, what if you do an apprenticeship at the club? Like, would you be open to that? And I was like, yeah, like absolutely, like get me on this apprenticeship now. So it went back and forward for a couple of weeks, and they managed to create an apprenticeship that gave me a role at the club so I could stay full time and work. And then there was a guy who in this season, the International Academy just started as well. And in the week they were getting me to help them with like I was doing games for the International Academy. I was, doing the Twitter updates and all that for them. I was helping them film games. And I like drifted more and more and more towards helping with the International Academy.
Yeah.
And it expanded and went from like 15 players to like 30 players in the next year. And they're like, we need like more consistent help now. And then I ended up, and I think it was about July last year, basically went full time with them and was just working with the National Academy. And that's really cool. It's taken me to some really, really cool places. We played at the Stadium of Light last year. And especially being that local club to Sunderland and having all these huge clubs
Mm.
pretty close to us, we've got a great relationship with Sunderland and Newcastle. And I remember last season we played Sunderland in pre-season, and it was a real kind of like, hang on, this is like a different level of stuff I'm doing now. Because I was given a shirt and like, right, we need you guys to get this shirt signed by all the players from both teams, for like charity or something. And
Yeah.
I remember standing in the dressing room with like people that had been watching on telly and in the stands for Sunderland, and I'm thinking like, hang on, like Joe Bellingham stood next to me, like this is mental, this. And ever since then I was kind of just like, all right, this is what I want to do. This is awesome. Um, and yeah, I kind of just got pulled into the International Academy side of it, and they've been getting bigger and bigger every year. So ever since that, really, I've just been working with them near enough full time. We still sometimes drift between the first team and the International Academy and help out when needed. But yeah, that's kind of where I am. As far as day-to-day stuff goes, like I said, it's basically the same as, a normal media team member would do at the first team, except the way we market stuff is probably a little bit different because you're not
Right.
trying
Yeah.
to you're not trying to update fans and sell tickets. You're trying to, convince players that this is a great place to come for their education and to play football in Europe. So
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched upon there on, your journey and what you have done, but in terms of long-term goals, where do you see yourself? What do you want to do? What's your long-term aspirations?
Do you know what it is? So I do so this is like a proper curveball here. So I bowl for, like, 10-pin bowling.
Yeah.
So I bowl for England, right? Doing 10-pin bowling.
No way.
Yeah, it's the biggest curveball. So I mean, for me, obviously, like I want to do that professionally and go out and to America and travel the world and keep doing that. And Shields have been great. Like they've given me the time off whenever I need to go and compete and play for England and stuff. And I'm literally going away for like a week and a half tomorrow, to France to go and compete on TV. So they've been brilliant when it comes to like time off.
Yeah.
So what? So we'll say if we're taking everything away, then like bowling, I want to be a professional bowler and do that and
Yeah.
travel full time. But if we're talking like bowling doesn't exist anymore, then I think it's one of those where there's a couple aspirations, It's
Yeah.
I've gotten really into like my video and photography and like creating the content. I've bought like myself, I've bought, camera setup and stuff. So I really enjoy doing that. And obviously everyone says, like Premier League, but I love to work. But, like someone like F1, right, would be sick. And it's one of those where they're kind of on par, where of course I'm from, I live in Sunderland and support Sunderland. So when I got the chance to film at the stadium and be on the pitch at the stadium and you kind of working there and you're in the dressing room like this is awesome. Like you imagine doing this in front of 45,000 people. So I mean, if I ever got the chance to work at Sunderland, then absolutely I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, it's one of
Uh,
those jobs that you just drop anything to do.
yeah, this is the thing. It's one of those where it's kind of the thing of like I was speaking to my mum the other day, and she was like, "Yeah, but you know, I obviously doing this, you're doing that, you're doing whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, but." If for some reason someone texts me tonight and goes, "Come to Sunderland," you just go, don't you?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, of
And I
course.
it's one of those where I'd absolutely be gone, and I if you asked me a year ago, I'd say, "Oh, Premier League club," but Sunderland are a Premier League club now, and hopefully it's looking like they're going to stay a Premier League
Yeah,
club as
yeah.
well. Touch wood that doesn't come to bite me in a couple of months' time. But yeah, definitely, I'd like to see how good of a club I could work for,
Yeah.
in the football league, and because it's one of those where you travel with. I mean, you travel with the players, and you go into matches from the stadium in front of 3 or 4 thousand people, but then you get to like the Premier League level, and you're in stadiums of 50,000 people, and you're not just getting a bus to the game to then go and stand in some absolute tin pot shed, because we all know there is a couple of
There's
stadiums
a
that you
few
look
of those. Yeah.
because like this is the thing as well. South Shields has a really nice ground, and there's a couple grounds I've been to where you go like, oh,
Yeah.
this is the trenches. This,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
to be able to go to these huge stadiums, but also like the whole lifestyle of it, right? Where if you work for a Premier League club, you're going to hotels nearly every weekend, because they don't do like there and back in a day, they do the full weekend, and especially like if you work for a team in the Champions League or in Europe, then you're flying to different countries like that. That's the dream, and I mean that would be something super cool. But if not football, F1 because it's the same where I just like traveling, and if the job that I do can take me around the world, then I'm all for it, and I think it would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
but who knows? You never know. Hopefully, I might be working for someone in a couple of years, but
Yeah.
it's one of those where if you asked me 3 years ago, definitely don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
you never know what's around the corner.
Well, sometimes you just fall into it, right? You just fall into a field and then you fall in love with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think football media or media in general was ever something I kind of thought, yeah, do you know what, that I want to do this. It was kind of just you fall into it and then you go, actually, like probably landed on my feet here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you said about the bowling thing. That's really, I think that's a really interesting. I just wasn't expecting that, so that's good. We'll have to talk more about that after the show. But now let's move on to South Shields. What a start it's been this season. for you guys. Can you talk us through the recent success?
Yeah, I think we're what, six games into the actual season now, and just this weekend we actually won an FA Cup game. That's something I haven't seen before. Historically, I don't think, or at least teams I support don't seem to be very good at cup runs. I mean, Sunderland haven't won a cup game in about 5 years. But yeah, we're having a really good start. I think I don't know if we're top of it. I'd like to say we're top of the league. I don't think we are anymore. I think
I
but we are top of the league. Yeah, well, very good. But it's really good. I think a lot of the business we've done this year has been really good. And we're what, 4 wins, 2 draws in 6 games, and it's an exciting time to be around the club. I think a lot of the signings that we've made this year, and we have like in the office that we work, we've got a big glass door. It's literally like that one there. We've got a big glass door and it looks out on the pitch. And you know, we, all the signings usually get done on the pitch or on the balcony, so we can see directly to them. And then we'll be in the office and we'll see a sign. I remember, I mean, we got Kedwin Scott right from, I think it was Carlisle he came from, and we're all in the office like, hang on, we've got Kedwin Scott and Paul Blackett in the same team here. This is dangerous.
yeah.
And I definitely think, obviously, we had the managerial change in the summer, and the squad was basically completely overhauled. There's not many people in the squad or that are starting week in, week out that were here a season or two ago. And we've especially had a defensive overhaul as well. We've got the likes of Ollie Bainbridge has just come in. We've got we've just got a pretty solid defense now. It's one of those where you look at the team and you go, there's not really anywhere that we could probably improve on. And I think what works in our favour is we're next to Sunderland, Newcastle, and Middlesbrough. And that for us is because we seem to have a good relationship, at least in my eyes, I'd say, with a lot of uh, it typically seems to be that all the players that play in the Northeast have played for probably every club in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Paul Black he's been at Gateshead, he started at Newcastle, and everyone's either played for one of them at some point. So people just dot around, and especially with Sunderland so close. I mean, we've got who've we got? I'm trying to remember, isn't it? We've got Caden Kelly from Sunderland. We've got Reece Walsh from Sunderland on loan at the moment. I had Ben Middlemas last year. We've got Ollie Bainbridge, like I said, he's just come in. And then from Newcastle, we've got, I know he's injured now, but we've got Kyle Crossley, and there's a lot of players who are popping out these academies, and I think what's different this year, and it's one of those where if you look at recent years when we've come up, we've signed quite experienced players from the football league. You signed, especially when we came out the Northern Prem and into the National League. There's a lot of really really good players who were really talented in the day and were in the football league and have played a lot higher up and bring that experience.
Yeah.
But they also, it's one where they're in the National League now. Like, is there really that desire for them to be better as a player because they've kind of had their career behind them? There's not really anything to prove. Where I think now we've got a lot of really, really young players and a lot of really exciting players, and especially for the National League North, we play an exciting style of football. And I think now we have, Ian Watson, it's his first ever managerial gig as well. Obviously he's been about, and we've got the assistant manager of Carl Magne as well, who are, two really, really good managers. And it's his first job as, the sort of full-on manager. He's been the assistant and roles like that before. And so there with the managerial team and the players, they're all young, they all have a big career and a bright future ahead of all of them. So I think all of them have something to prove. And it's similar to Sunderland, right? And it's a really exciting thing to watch where you see a lot of these players who are really, really talented players. I mean, last year we had Lucas de Bol, who came in from Newcastle, I believe it was. He's in Portugal now playing, right? And you get these players that come in, you feel like you should never be at this level. Like, you're gonna fly here. And I think just with this young, hungry squad and a young, hungry manager, they're fighting for more. They have that drive in the team where they're like, we want to just go up the league, we want to go up the leagues, and maybe even if it's not for, we want to make South Shields, the best team it can be, and they're hungry as a player, that performance because they want to be up in the football league, they want to be up in the championship one day, maybe even the Premier League. It just everyone comes together and just gives everything they have. And you really when you watch Shields, you really go like, all right, these guys are literally gonna give everything they've got here. And then we've got that good mix of experience as well. And when you've got a straight partnership of Kedwin Scott and Paul Blackett, you're gonna absolutely reap goals all season, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said there, with the defense, you've said, it's a very steady defense. And I was actually just looking at the defensive record, and I mean, that is really impressive. Currently the best across all three of the national leagues, by the way, after 8 games, just 3 goals conceded and already 5 clean sheets. What's the secret there? Is it the new signings that have come in? Have they really impressed you?
I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of changes in that. There's a couple in between. I think Jasper Sheik, he's just he's a level above him. Like I know, like we went and we had Miles Bunny before, and really good keeper, and he moved on to I think it was Matlock Town. He's moved on to, and we signed Jesper Sheik from I think it was Crawley, and he'd had a couple spells, and something tells me he was at like Altrincham or somewhere or Aldershot, somewhere along those lines, and he's come in and he'll go far. He's just as a keeper, he's really really strong as well. I mean, Ethan Mann, he's been an absolute standout player at the start of the season. He's done really, really well. But everyone, I mean, you've got Dylan Morseware. That was a strange one. He came back. He'd actually been released from the club last summer, and he ended up coming back, and I think that's a good thing because it's always good to have those experienced players around the squad who know everyone, around the training ground, around the stadium, and the fans love him because he's been there that long. So adds that bit of sort of an experienced head onto it. But I mean, I think a lot of the players that we seem to have picked up this year, Daniel Dodds from Hartlepool, Caden Sykes from Middlesbrough, all of these guys have played at much higher levels, or even maybe if a not much higher level, the level we're at to the level that they could probably play at is like we're bringing in National League, maybe even League Two players who are coming into this squad, and I always think that if you can do that, then you're going to be pretty set up. And even looking at our midfield, you got the likes of Sean McGurk, who's coming from. He came from Swindon. He looked really, really bright. Robbie Tinkler, he came in from Gateshead, and although it's not like a let's dwell on someone's demise. Gateshead have had their fair share of turmoil in the past couple of months. And I think for us, we've been able to, especially with Carl coming over here from Gateshead, there's a lot of connections between Gateshead. So a lot of the players who were, favourable in the eyes of Carl Magna or whatever have come to Shields, and we seem to just be picking up players who are, quite above the level of the National League North. And it's similar to Macclesfield last year. And by all means, I'm not saying we're going to be 10 points clear by the end of the season. That would be lovely, but whether they were consistently picking up players who definitely shouldn't really be at the league. But
Yeah,
there's just something about the club that they go, this club's going somewhere. I like the vision. I like what I see, and I think just the level of player we have is it's a level above. And even the way we play, you'll see a lot of hoofball in the National League North
yeah,
and the National in general. Even higher up, you'll see a lot of hoofball.
definitely.
We like the ball on the ground. We like to. I think as Ian Watson said in his interview when he came in, he said, we want to have a lot of the ball, and then the second we lose the ball, I want the lads to be absolutely ruthless to win that ball back. And I think a lot of teams can't handle the ruthless aggression and the pressure, and also the fact that we're comfortable just sitting on the ball.
Yeah,
There's a lot of teams that get the ball and they have a real drive and we need to do something, we need to do something. Let's hoof it up, let's try and force it. Where Shields will just pass it around and they'll make their own opportunities. And I think it's a bit of a culture shock to a lot of teams where they go, all right, well, how do we actually play against this? Because it's almost like you're playing a team in a much higher division. The way they play it, and I mean, you'll have clubs who obviously have some pretty naff pitches and what have you, and then you have to be versatile. But I think overall in the whole squad, like we just have a really really strong squad, and there's great togetherness around the whole squad.
So, Ben, for those who are sort of unfamiliar with the North, could you tell us just how special the division is and how hard it is to succeed in this division? Because obviously there's teams like Chester who were actually tipped to do quite well this season, weren't they? And they've struggled early on. So, it goes to show that things aren't as easy as they seem in all of the national leagues.
Yeah, I think the National League it is a special league, and it's similar to the National League South in a way, um, because you've got that mix of part-time and full-time clubs where it's kind of I want to say it's where the men get separated from the boys. You know, uh, you have these teams who have big budgets, have full-time staff, have good stadiums, good facilities, a good infrastructure, and then you have those teams who are part-time and not to downplay them, but almost to a part where they kind of think like, hang on, how are we here?
Yeah,
And you always have them teams who kind of jump up into the National League North and then fall back into the abyss, and you'll never see them again. So I think it is a it's a league of grit and a league of desire and determination, really. And I think as much as the mix of the part-time and full-time setups makes that difference, it becomes so hard because you never really know what you're gonna get.
yeah,
Because
definitely.
Chester's really struggling this year, and last year they made a load of really good signings, and then they were really far up. They were up there. And then because it's like the stopgap between non-league and teams who shouldn't be in non-league.
Yeah,
If you look, we had Kidderminster was in our league. You got Scunthorpe as well, and these teams who, were football league teams and have these big stadiums, big fan bases, and the big budgets. I mean, Shield that not been in the football league, or not for maybe a couple hundred, maybe 100 years or so. But we're full time. We've got I don't know, but I do hear a lot people go, especially in post matches when you lose. Yeah, but Shills have a big budget, and to a degree, I don't think that makes obviously it makes a difference, right? There's no there's no beating around the bush there that having a full-time budget versus a part-time budget and having players in 4 or 5 days a week as opposed to Tuesday and Thursday nights will make a difference. But it's a ruthless league, and it's one where you see it where a lot of academy players and there's people go around saying, oh well, yeah, but they can play in League One, the Championship, but they'd struggle in the National League North because the football is such a different style, right? You see a lot of you look at the Premier League, it's physically demanding in terms of your physical fitness um and what have you. The National League's physically demanding in a different way. You're not playing on, absolute carpets every week. You're playing on like hills and there's grounds where you go and they're waterlogged or they're just rock hard or you're playing on all sorts of conditions that are challenging. Um, and unlike, higher up levels, you'll get some part-time teams and even some full-time teams where, and it's more of a non-league thing where if they're not as good as you, they'll just go through you. And it's one where a lot of these young players who have come through the academies where it's, let's be technical, let's do this well, let's do that well. Come into these leagues and the players come into these leagues where it's like you can't beat them, hit them, then they really struggle with that. And it's a psychological thing as well, where it's a really, really demanding league to be in. And especially like I said previously with Bishop Stortford and teams like that, because of that north-south divide that isn't really a north-south divide, where you probably doesn't happen so much on the southern side. I mean, it might still happen, but because there's so many southern teams, there's a couple southern teams that just have to take that hit. I mean, we had Needham Market last year, and Bishop Stortford, Hereford, these teams who were like London, South Wales,
Yeah,
like Needham Market was basically in Norwich, right? And you're coming to South Shields on a Tuesday night, like financially that's hard for a
yeah,
part-time team as
yeah,
anything because their travel isn't, oh well, we're going 2 hours to London. It's like, hang on, we're going 6 hours to Sunderland.
yeah.
And that's difficult, and the travel's demanding, and it really just throws stuff in that direction. And the level you're at, you kind of never really know what you can expect, and it's a bit of a lottery, a bit of a whirlwind, and a bit of a you can place your bets at the start of the season, but unlike the Premier League where you could, if you bet on the top six, you're probably going to get four of them right. Yeah, you don't know. Season to season, it could be anybody really.
Exactly, exactly. And just moving on to Forest Green now. Actually, they've had a very good start as well, haven't they? Unbeaten in their first 9 games. They've played nine. I think most other teams in the league have played 8. But they played 9 and they are yet to lose. And I saw this stat the other day. I thought it was interesting. They actually have the highest XG so far across top 5 tiers of football, English football. So more XG than Liverpool, Arsenal. Yeah, I thought that was quite cool. But I did think at the start of the season when Robbie Savage got appointed as head coach, I was a bit skeptical about it. I know a lot of people were as well. But so far it seems like a good fit, doesn't it? What were your thoughts on the appointment at the time, Ben?
It is a weird one, isn't it? Because Robbie Savage obviously he owns Macclesfield, right? Or so it it's one of those where I remember when it came about and people were like, oh, like Robbie Savage might be going to Forest Green, and he was tipped with a job, and you kind of think, well, would you leave the club that you're at, that you actually own, to then go and manage a different club? But then I suppose, like, as much as that might be his, business ventures per se, you still wanna you still wanna have that career, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, and I suppose for him, it's a step up in that, and it's not like he's stepping away from Macclesfield completely. It'll still be about the building, and he'll still have his input, and so I think it's one of those where I wouldn't have expected him to leave. Because if you're that heavily invested in a club, I feel like you'd like to have the control.
Yeah,
But that was a decision he made, and I mean he had a worldie of a season with Macclesfield when they finished. They had 109 points or something, and finished like 10 to 20 points clear, and I practically won the league by like January.
yeah,
And they were absolutely steamrolling everything, and they from his management style, like, he's ruthless. He is absolutely like foot on the neck. If we're there, we're gonna kill them now. Now,
yeah,
like you're at 1-0, you're at 2-0. All right, let's kill them off. And there's a lot of managers where they'll get 1-0, they'll get 2-0. All right, let's conserve the lead. Let's try and scrap the goal. He's very much a manager where 1 goal, 2 goal. All right, let's kill them.
yeah.
Let's absolutely write them off here. And it's one of those where I understand it because Forest Green obviously came down from League Two, and are in the National League, and they want to go up. They're not gonna want to panter around the National League, and because especially with you know what is it? You get two up, you get one automatic spot, and then you get your playoff spot. Like that league is hard to get
Yeah, it's
out of.
difficult, difficult. Yeah.
And you saw it a couple of years ago with I think Notts Forest and Wrexham,
Mm,
Notts County and Wrexham, sorry, where they were just two absolute firehouses of a team, but you can only get one team up at a time automatically,
yeah.
and it's so difficult to get up that if you're not running away with the league, then one bad game can stick you in that league for another year, and being stuck in the National League for more than 1 year can cause some real
Mm,
problems.
definitely.
And I think looking at these, I mean, he signed 12, over 12 new players, right? He stripped that squad to the bare bones and rebuilt it his way. And, for Forest Green to actually give him the trust and the backing to go, all right, well, you can come in and you need to make all the changes you need, like make them. And I think for a manager, that's a really positive thing
Mm,
to because, he could have easily walked in there and they go, "This is what you've got. Good luck," and that makes it difficult. Where when you have managers who the players are at the club aren't their players as per se,
mm,
that causes issues. And I think the guys he'll have brought in will have been a case of you're going to help us get back to the football league. You're going to help us get back to the football league, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it the way that we want to do it. And he's had that time, he's had that trust to rebuild the squad, and he's playing the way he wants to play. And 9 wins from nine, that's pretty impressive. And I think it's the early momentum really that is everything in football in general, but especially in these harder leagues where it's so difficult to win. You know, Getting a flying start is so crucial. If it's a couple of games in and you start dropping 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points away from the top of the league, then start thinking like, hang on, like we're miles away here.
mm,
Where if you have your foot on the gas from sort of day one, it makes everything a little bit easier.
definitely.
Obviously not psychologically, it's a double-edged sword really, because if you get up there, then it's the pressure of, well, you've now got to hold this up till we're in September now. You've now got to hold this up until April, May. So I think it's a good appointment, and I know a lot of people have their own opinions on Robbie, but at the end of the day, if you're looking for a manager who's gonna be aggressive and gonna play it, I think they've picked the right guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to move on to Salisbury in the south, because I think they're a very interesting team to look at the moment because I'm not quite sure what's happening over there. So obviously they had a very busy summer with a new takeover. It was announced in June that Ali Al Hamad, a businessman from Kuwait, would be taking over the club. With the huge investment he must have brought to the club, many were expecting Salisbury to be quite a team to watch this year in the south. However, it hasn't been the case. Salisbury sits second from bottom currently on just 4 points and are winless after 8 games. They're not the start they wanted, I'm sure. What I'm sure the pressure is mounting on everybody involved there.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's honestly until you brought it up, I don't think I've ever looked at Salisbury in much detail, but I thought curated takeover to a National League South club was like, all right, well, let's have a little look. And yeah, like you said, the guy's got a lot of money. He's made a lot of money, and he definitely chucked a lot of money in it. But it's one of those where in football, money doesn't always mean
Not
success,
always, no,
and
no.
you just have to look at the Premier League with the amount of money some clubs spend and where that gets them. Just because you can spend a lot of money doesn't mean you're gonna win a lot. And obviously it's that sustainability piece. You can only spend so much money for so long before you have to look at it and go, this isn't working.
Yeah,
Uh, and even in the National League as a club, aside from his personal finances or however much money he might or might not have, as a club, you can't consistently be losing this much money, and just keep chucking money in it. There's got to come a point where you go like, hold on, this isn't working. But also, you know, I think football fans, the phrase is football fans are fickle.
yeah,
Um, they're always, you win a couple of games and it's all right. We're absolutely running this league here, and then you lose a couple of games and the world's burning down.
yeah, exactly,
So I
yeah,
mean, they've had no wins in 6 games, but it's 4 draws and 2 losses. So it's not exactly like they've just been 6 losses and nothing. Yeah, they've not scored a lot of goals. They've only had 4 goals on 6 games, and it's not ideal. But I don't think a takeover it's a lengthy process. It's There's going to be a lot of changes in the back of the club, and no doubt they'll have promised a lot to the players, to the staff, and to the fans about the takeover. But I don't think you can be too critical. Obviously, you know, it is a process. It's you can dream for it comes in, everything changes in a year, but normally always happen. Uh, um, had their owners come, uh, and their ownership seems mental to think that they were in the National League just a year or two ago, a couple of years ago. But I think give them time. It's always hard to put your finger on a new takeover, and it takes time, especially when they're changing it. You don't know what it is changing. You don't know what's going on behind. But in my perspective, I'd rather have an owner that's a positive for the football club than an owner that might be a negative. And if, it's like Sunderland. I'm going to keep going back to Sunderland because it's the club that I know a lot about. It's the club that I support. But when Kyril de Vries came in and was signing people you've never heard of, and players from countries you've never seen, and all of a sudden they go, "Oh, we've signed so and so from this league," and everyone's like, "Who on earth is this guy?" Um, a lot of people questioned it, but it's that long-term process, and I think that if the owner is a positive thing for the club and they have that process, I think give them time. It might not be an overnight change, and maybe they might get relegated this season, and it might not be great, but if the vision's there and they have that good plan, then by all means give them time, and I'm sure it'll work out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I want to bring out up about Salisbury, Matty Taylor. I don't know if you know a lot about Matty Taylor. He's come into Salisbury as one of the signings for this season. And from where I'm from in South Bristol, he's an absolute legend. He's a cult hero. I don't know if you know the story of Matty Taylor, Ben.
I don't know.
So, Matt Taylor, I played a lot in the EFL, and he was at Bristol Rovers for a few years up until 2017. And on deadline day of January 2017, his release clause was triggered by Bristol City, Rovers' massive arch rivals. And if you're south of the river, you're probably going to be Bristol City. If you're north, you're probably going to be Rovers. So he made the switch to south, and yeah, he was not a safe. He was an endangered man. Let's just say that. But I mean, he was loved when he came over. I mean, just a total hero. And he only played, I think, 3 seasons, and he wasn't there for long. But I mean, everybody south of the river, there's a place in their heart for Matty Taylor. So he is someone I was very excited to see this season. But it's not gone quite to plan just yet. Obviously, I'm sure he'll need some settling in. But no goals as of yet. But he has played in every one of the games. So, but I think that's something to just keep an eye on, isn't it, with Salisbury? But yeah, we'll move on from that. Now, yeah, sort of lastly, moving on to my club, Western-super-Mare. I must say I have been quite reluctant to talk about them too much on this podcast series. I don't want it to become like a Western only sort of channel, but it is fair to say that I think we deserve our flowers after the start to the season that we've had. 6 wins on the bounce in the league, including a 3-0 thrashing of last year's playoff finals Maidstone. Yeah, no, I think the boys seem to be firing on all cylinders at the moment, and I am quite excited to see where this season does go. Ben, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Western, some of their players or anything like that.
Not overly familiar. I think my football manager regime's probably as far as I've got to Western Supermare. Probably applied for that job a couple of times and probably still not gotten it. But I don't know a lot about them. But what I can say is 6 wins in a row, and especially at the start of the season, that's what you want, and momentum is probably the most important thing, especially at the start of the season and when the season gets on, because football season's a long season, and
Of course,
I think that momentum is something that's going to play a really crucial part. And if you guys can keep it up, then how far can you go is the question.
absolutely. And yeah, also Louis Britton. I don't know if you've heard of Louis Britton. I just want to say, obviously, massive congratulations to Louis Britton. He won the Player of the Month for National League South last month with 5 goals in just a few weeks. Yeah, I mean, great player, great player. He's always looks a threat, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. But I think that people do forget about when they think about clubs like Weston. Weston are a part-time team, so to be competing with the full-time teams in our league, Torquay, Dorking, Worthing, Chelmsford, Ebbsfleet, stuff like that, other massive clubs with big budgets, great facilities and stuff like that, to be competing with those guys, I think is quite impressive. And yeah, it's nice at the start of the season because we can go, oh great, we're second and we're flying. But like you said, it's a long season, and I think our squad compared to a lot of full-time teams are obviously going to be a bit thinner. So yeah, you just got to hope that the injuries stay at bay. And yeah, no, we'll see, definitely, definitely. But anything else to add there on sort of Western or anybody you know?
I mean, just looking at the league table now, I mean, you've got Torquay in there, Dorking as well. There's a lot of good teams in there. I think personally, like I said, it's a bit of a lottery. You never know where. As long as you guys keep the players that are doing well, and you keep everyone match fit, match ready, and off the injury table, I don't see why you can't keep this going on. And like I said, it's a long season. Anything can happen. Um, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that'll probably be that for today's episode. Thank you so much, Ben, for coming on. It was really, really interesting.
not a problem. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Thanks.
Not a problem.